Thank you, choir and Ronnie. We recognize that CVUUS gathers on land which was occupied for centuries by the Western Abenaki people. We respect the Abenaki's spiritual relationship to the land and waters of the Champlain Valley. As we gather here, we pay honor to their ancestors and to future generations by learning their culture and committing to build a more inclusive, just, and respectful space for all. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning to all of those here in the sanctuary this morning, our friends on Zoom, and those of you who will find us later on YouTube. Good morning and welcome to this Sunday of silver rain. How appropriately chosen. Yeah. To this Sunday service at the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. CVUUS exists to spiritually nourish, challenge, and sustain people of all ages and circumstances so that they might lead lives of meaning, integrity, and service. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, your origins, your way of being, your spiritual journey, we welcome you here. If you're new to our community, we encourage you to sign one of these cards on the welcome table in the lobby so that we might get to know each other better. If you have a life milestone or passage to share, you can find these yellow cards near the door. And if you know someone, including yourself, who could use a little care from our caring network, please use a pink card on the welcome table in the lobby and slip it in a confidential pink envelope. My name is Abi Sessions. I'm a member of the worship team, and it is my pleasure today to be the worship associate for one of our two, not interim, but contract still ministers, Tricia Hart. I would like to invite Alan Moore to come up and light the chalice. Alan didn't know I was going to say this, or he would never have agreed to light the chalice. But if you wonder how social hour happens every week, week after week, we have Alan Moore to thank. Among others, but Alan is the king of the kitchen. And if you're interested in being prince or princess of the kitchen, you could let Alan know. Please join us in the chalice lighting as Alan lights the chalice. Oh, it went out. Oh. Chalice lighting is on the screen and in your order of service. With faith to face our challenges, with love that casts out fear, with hope to trust tomorrow, we accept this day as the gift it is, a reason for rejoicing.
Good morning. The call to worship this morning is a poem from the poet Liesl Müller. She wrote, "The odds against us are endless. Our chances of being alive together statistically non-existent. Still, we have made it, alive in a time when rationalists in square hats and hatless Jehovah's Witnesses agree it is almost over. Alive with our lively children who, but for endless ifs, might have missed out on being alive together with the marvels and follies and longings and lies and wishes and error and humor and mercy and journeys and voices and faces and colors and summers and mornings and knowledge and tears and chants. Amen indeed. You know, I was just yesterday afternoon, sorry, this is not in your order of service, but I will just say it. I was yesterday at the Unitarian Universalist Society in Burlington for the installation, I always think that sounds like a washing machine, but of the Reverend Karen Johnston, who is the new senior minister. And it was a service filled with applause and cheers and actually a bit of call and response. And it was awesome. Just say it. Let us sing our first hymn. It's number 1000, the first one in your teal hymnal, and up there.
Thank you, Earth, a love letter to our planet. Pictures and words by April Pulley Sayre. Dear Earth, thank you for water and those that float, for slippery seaweed and stone. Thank you for mountains and minerals that strengthen bills and bone. Thank you for air, even fishy whale breath. Thank you for colors and coastlines and beach. Thank you for tiny and towering, for trees and vines that reach. Thank you for curves and prickles and parallels, for patterns, all shapes that repeat. Thank you for leaves and stems and buds, for plant parts we can eat. Thank you for sounds and storms and seasons, for struggles and pale in-betweens. Thank you for rays and radials and overlapping greens. Thank you for jumbles, ingredients for soil, and bright new growth in spring. Thank you for those that crawl. Yes, all, even for those that sting. Thank you for sunsets, for sky, room for birds, for edges, eyes can roam. Thank you for beginnings, for endings, for lifetimes. Thank you for being our home.
On purpose, we do some things in the middle of the service together to remind us why we're here and what here is, and the fact that here doesn't just happen on Sunday mornings between when the choir comes at 9 and we all leave eventually coffee hour, which goes on and on. There are lots of other things that are happening. So just a couple to remind you, though you may be one of those people that waits for the Wednesday email blast and reads it very carefully and takes notes and puts things on your calendar. How many, sorry, Francois does. Excellent, excellent. But not all of us do, not all of us do. So in case you haven't noticed, there is a contra dance this Friday, right? The 10th. And contra dances here are legendary, and and gender neutral and a whole lot of fun. And I don't know what time it starts. 7. Excellent. That's good. Also, coming up really soon, shockingly, because it doesn't happen until the June 1st, is this thing called the Rhubarb Festival. I have to tell you, I have never, ever, I've served lots of congregations. I have never heard of a rhubarb festival. This is a first for me, and I'm still learning about it. And my understanding is that there are lots of pies. There are lots of different kinds of pies. There are other delicious things that people bring. Is that right? There are books to buy. There are other things I don't even know. And the whole thing happens between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Saturday, June 1st. Right? Yes, as Ronnie says, it just comes and it goes. So you should mark your calendar for that. And if you, like me, are not yet, haven't yet been given the sacred recipe for rhubarb pie and specific recipe for rhubarb pie crust, maybe you will dare to do something new this year. I do hope that you come. And I am making what probably is not the absolutely final announcement about this year's stewardship campaign, but it's pretty darn close. It has been, some weeks ago, we promised you that we would do this whole stewardship campaign in a month, and I know it's May 5th, but it's just barely after the end of April. It was a month of lots of conversation and lots of meetings and lots of new member stuff that was happening at the same time, which made me happy. Many, many, many of you and you have made a new, maybe a first time, maybe the 38th time that you have pledged to this congregation. A few of you have not yet been heard from, and the hardworking stewardship team is actually bravely using this tool. It's called a telephone. Not sure, I think those things that we carry around all the time work. So my one request to you is if you're getting a phone call from somebody at this congregation, answer it. Or listen to the, oh, there you go. It could be that. There are many other kinds of rings, I didn't even recognize it. Or listen to the message, because we really, the campaign is going really well, and we hope to be able to give you absolutely final numbers very soon. So please, please do. It's part of what happens in this congregation. And now the offering? Okay.
For the month of May, we'll be sharing our offering with Gather, which some of you may be familiar with, some of you are familiar with, and Colleen Brown, the clerk of the works for the building of Gather in her retirement, is here to tell us more about Gather.
I don't think I need this. So Gather is a pretty unusual place, and in some ways it's easier to begin by telling you what it's not. It's not a social service agency, it's not a homeless shelter, it's not a soup kitchen, and it's not a drop-in center. What it is a community living room. It was started by Breadloaf Mountain Zen Community on Valentine's Day 2023 in response to the epidemic of loneliness in this world. In our Gather, started by the Breadloaf Mountain Zen Peacemaker group, our tradition is to focus on the oneness of life and the interconnection of all of us. Sounds a little bit like the UU principles, of the inherent worth and dignity and interconnection of life. We call it community-engaged Buddhism, and it can also be seen every day as you walk in to gather. Our practice there is very simple. It's to answer the door. We greet everyone who comes in as a whole person, however they are and wherever they are at that moment. We don't see them as a label, a diagnosis, a client, a particular class, or a problem. And we encourage folks to get to know each other. And what we hope is that if you come in to gather, you'll have the opportunity to get to know someone you might not ever get to know or even notice in the other parts of your life. And there are few places in our community where everyone is really welcome, and there is this broad mix of people. Gather is busy. We have lots of folks, some of whom you might think are like you, and some of whom you think are not like you, but we're really all one. At Gather, we offer food, tea, coffee, and hospitality. It's a place to share a meal, take a shower, get your laundry done, and stay warm. But more importantly, it's a setting in which you're greeted by name. You can engage in a conversation, make new friends, feel seen and heard, hang out with new people and old friends, and escape loneliness. Everyone is welcome. We also offer community acupuncture, daily mindfulness, art projects, a weekly music jam every Saturday morning, and a circle of joys and concerns on Sunday morning. And everything is free. No money changes hands at Gather. There are several CVUUSers who hang out or volunteer at Gather, and I imagine they would be happy to talk to you about Gather as well. You can talk with Dinah Smith, Ravel Allen, Margie Young, Abi Sessions, Rosalie Cryan, Barnaby Feeder, Carolyn Brewer, Steve Butterfield, Tom Morgan, and probably more that I'm just not remembering. So we're here today because, as I say, Gather is free for everyone, and we do not operate on any government grants or funding. We depend on the generosity of our friends and neighbors. So I'm thanking CVUUS for sharing the plate with us at Gather. I ask you please to give generously as you can, and I also invite you to stop by, because that's really the only way to get to know what Gather is really about. Thank you.
So the offering this morning will now be most gratefully received. to do this.
Milestones and passages from a week of living the rich lives we enjoy. This one from Poppy, lifting up the college students who are living their faith by encamping and protesting for Palestine, especially our dear Middlebury College ones. And this one from Miles Petterly. My Aunt Dottie passed on April 25th, just about a month shy of her 105th birthday. Not that she was counting. Just a number, she would say. Her secret, if she would have said such a thing, taking one day at a time with a positive attitude. Thank you, Miles.
And another sad and joyous milestone to announce to you, and that is that yesterday morning, Ginny Moser died. She was peaceful, surrounded by her family, and they wanted you all to know that. Marnie Wood says, in loving recognition of the life of our friend, Ginny Moser, who was so dear to us, a voice of caring energy and stable presence, her smile and gentle demeanor blessed this congregation, as did her strong voice when needed, Marnie says. So, Ginny's son Peter is here. Peter, would you raise your hand? Thank you. Oh my goodness, lots and lots of family members. Thank you all for, I didn't realize you were all here. My goodness. So know that this congregation sends you all love. Thank you for coming today. I know that people are going to want to check in with you after the service. And we know nothing about a memorial service, no other plans at the moment. So, but we will here. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So would you join me and one another in some moments of stillness together? In words and then in shared silence. A young colleague, Unitarian Universalist minister, who writes, Spirit of love and truth, help us to feel you in our breathing in and breathing out. Quiet our minds, even if only for a moment. Still our bodies, even if only for a moment. Soothe our souls in this holy moment. Some of our spirits are so weary. Some of our bodies feel tired, even fried. Some of our minds feel frantic and uneasy. How long will this last, we ask in desperation. Spirit of life-giving love, remind us of the cycles of life so that we might turn toward the dawn. Turn toward the thaw, and turn toward the rebirth of spring with new hope. Make that hope alive in us, O Holy One. Ignite that hope so it burns brighter than our fears. And may that bright hope shine for others to witness, that our faith might be a beacon and our love a lamp to light the way. O luminous Spirit, fill us with gratitude as we turn toward one another in the human family, never alone on our journeys, always reminded of a greater love that holds all. Blessed be. May it be so. And let the people say, Amen.
Our reading this morning is called Self-Portrait by David White. It doesn't interest me if there is one God or many gods. I want to know if you belong or feel abandoned, if you know despair or can see it in others. I want to know if you are prepared to live in the world with its harsh need to change you. If you can look back with firm eyes, saying, "This is where I stand." I want to know if you know how to melt into that fierce heat of living, falling toward the center of your longing. I want to know if you are willing to live day by day with the consequence of love and the bitter, unwanted passion of your sure defeat. I have been told in that fierce embrace, even the gods speak of God.
I didn't used to be a short person. So it's May. The air is warm. The sun is sometimes out. Flowers are blooming. Green fluff has begun to appear on the branches of trees and bushes. Fluff that someday soon will be leaves. For days, literally days, I have been counting the hours until the buds, the little hard buds on my lilac bushes, are going to finally open into color and scent. A few of them finally have. Today's service was planned as a celebration of all of this fecundity, of all that is spring, connecting us to Earth, to the myriad forms of life beyond us humans, connecting us too to our ancient pagan roots, including the celebration of Beltane, the fertility festival in which regeneration of the earth and life was marked in part through the sacred marriage of God and goddess. Ancient cultures that we call Celtic, to them Beltane was a time when normal daily life was suspended and people came together in couples and in community to feast and dance and make a new fire, to bedeck themselves and the world with new flowers, to give thanks for water and earth and life and energy in people's own bodies. I'm fond of Beltane, not least of all because when my youngest son, Charlie, was in middle school, he came home one day and rather irritatedly said, "I want to know what are the UU holidays I can get as a day off from school?" And I said, "Well, there's always Beltane," which meant I need, anyway, it was good. He never took Beltane off, but he really appreciated knowing about it. So that was the plan for today. And then our shared life in this time spoke up louder and louder and would not be ignored. On college and university campuses around the country and in a few other countries now too, students have left dorms and classrooms and said, "Pay attention. Our world is tortured by war in the Middle East, and people, especially the people of Gaza, are dying, tens of thousands of them, for no crime other than being who they are, for living in a particular place, for living in a particular time. It must stop. We must stop allowing it to happen. We must stop contributing money and weapons and political support to make it possible." And of course, that has been happening right here in this town on the campus of Middlebury College as well. And some have called for CVUUS to speak up too, and to act, and to say, yes, we're here too. We see, we hear, we feel, as people of faith, we cannot remain silent. So what does that mean? If we are people of faith, faith in what? With what goal or vision or hope? Most of us, no longer students, no longer living on campus, from our different perspectives, we can and do applaud the passion of young people who call for an end to violence and terror an end to war and starvation, and no safe place to be. We can and do appreciate the compassion of faculty and administrators who add their voices, who share their knowledge, who act sometimes as a buffer, who listen for the voices of all students, including those who feel threatened in this time. Or perhaps the whole thing seems overblown. We've seen this before, unrealistic, ineffective, reckless, dangerous. As people of faith, what shall we say? And in what hope? Somewhere in the midst of reading and thinking about all of this time over the last several days, I realized that this weekend marks the 54th anniversary of the shootings at Kent State University, May 4th, 1970, in the midst of protests against the war in Southeast Asia. A few days earlier, on April 30th, actually, of that year, President Nixon had announced that the war was not coming to an end, but was in fact widening. And that was happening because Cambodia had been invaded. There had been protests and violent clashes on campuses and in cities, including the small city of Kent, Ohio. The National Guard was brought in. Outside agitators were blamed for violence and destruction, including the burning to the ground of the ROTC building on that campus. And on May 4th, as people gathered for a rally at noon, National Guard troops fired into that group of demonstrators. 4 students were killed, 9 were injured. And 11 days later, we don't always remember this part, at the University of Mississippi in Jackson, police confronted students at an anti-war rally outside a campus dormitory. They were actually inside at that point, but they had been protesting, and the police opened fire, killing 2 students and injuring 12. And those events, and many more, helped to trigger a nationwide student strike in which 900 colleges and universities closed, ending the academic year without ending the semester. I have tried without success to explain to my children what that was like. I just think they don't believe me. 4 million students. I'm not sure who counted, but at least 4 million students were affected by all of this. That number did not count me, though it might have. I was 16. I was a junior in high school at a small school outside Boston. That sequence of events that, for me, was sparked by the protests of early May in 1970 changed my life, then and up until today. My class gathered to protest, to strike. We were illegally in a room on campus at an hour we weren't supposed to be there. And the teachers began to show up, and the head of school. And instead of just yelling at us and telling us to go back to our rooms, they said, "You're right. This moment is too important to ignore. We aren't going to close the school. We're not going to go on strike, but we will stop everything that's normal." And we had a teach-in. I think that was the first teach-in of my young life for 3 days the following week. And in those 3 days, we learned about our government's actions, about the history of Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and that whole experience changed me and what I wanted from my education, what I wanted to do with my life. I went on to take an Asian history class my senior year in high school. I studied Asian history in college, and I worked with refugees, mostly Vietnamese, who came to this country after the war. I can actually now discern the wandering path that I followed through all of that led me to the ministry 2.5 decades later. What changed was my understanding of who I was in the world and who I could be, and how much truth matters, and how much I had to learn. Me and everybody else. It taught me how we can only learn and change together. And that can happen in organized formal classes and institutions inside buildings, but I think it happens in an extraordinary way when people gather outside all of our normal rule-bound ways to say, wait, what's happening? What can we do? I would never have called myself a person of faith at that point, or for many years afterwards. And I do now. Over the last few weeks, I've had the delight of participating in a series that the welcoming team put together that we've called New to UU, where the point is to gather or invite newcomers to CVUUS, people who are considering formally joining this congregation, but we made the invitation much more general, and our sessions were actually about half and half, new people and not new people, which made them wonderful, I think. And of course, the questions that came mostly to me were to try to understand where this religious tradition of ours came from and where we stand on big issues like the one that we're all living now. I found myself talking about what one of my seminary professors referred to as our theological anthropology. Okay, so think about the words theological, which is the study of God, and anthropology, which means the study of people, human beings. So the question in that way of thinking is, what do we think about God, by whatever name or no name, and what do we think about human beings, human community, and their connection with this God thing? What's our essential nature, we humans? What is our ultimate purpose? What's the right way to think? What is right and true and good? And how does all of that tell us what we should say and believe at times like this one, when everything seems muddled and complicated? Probably because I'm a minister and because I grew up Catholic, I really identify, or at least think I understand, the two, what I've decided are the two basic schools of theological anthropology. Okay, imagine, number one. You all on this side of the room can be number one, all right? And what you believe, what your theological anthropology is that there is a big plan. And it mostly doesn't concern this life. It concerns a reality much larger than just this life. God is in charge. And we humans, most of us, don't get it. And we're not supposed to get it because we're not wise. Our vision is too small to take it in. Our actions are too impulsive and selfish. So we need guidance. We need authority to maintain order, because left to ourselves, we will mess it all up. I'm not sure whether those of you who also grew up Catholic as I did would necessarily grok this. Ooh, I'm really dating myself now. Option two, there is a big plan, And we human beings are meant to act it out. If there's a God, by whatever name, that, in fact, is God's vision. Have you ever heard the expression, we are God's hands and feet? Probably because you hang out with UUs too often. But that's an evocative phrase. So human beings in this anthropology act according to a vision. We are meant to. We do not always, but we are meant to act according to a vision of peace and compassion and beauty and joy for all people, for all the earth. Not because we're not impulsive and selfish and easily misled, but because we are susceptible to goodness and possibility and hope. Because we are affected by our own inherent worth and dignity and everybody else's. The world we live in has these two big ideas operating all the time. Paul. Okay. Forgive me. You just sat where you sat. Whatever you are, whatever you believe is up to you. Thank you, Paul. But that division, that idea that we are actually at odds with one another, not just because of our politics or our ethnicity or our backgrounds or our religious faith, but because we actually have very different big ideas about what human beings are supposed to be in this world. And the Unitarian, Universalist reality that we live in here has very much subscribed to the place where Paul wants to move. And it is, I utterly believe that that is right, and I know how much we fall short. And I still believe it is right. And therefore, when I speak, that's the place that I'm speaking from. Sorry, this is the place that I'm speaking from. And one of the reasons why I was so affected by the teach-ins that I got to go to when I was 16 and then many, many more times in the years to come is because I felt the reality of human beings acting out our job of acting out the big plan in the world by listening to each other, by learning from each other, by being changed. I love that poem that Abi read, the Self-Portrait by David White, but there's this line in it where he says, you know, there's this risk that the world is going to try to change you. And fundamentally, ultimately, you're good, you have inherent worth and dignity, and you shouldn't let the world change you. The world changes us all the time. And I think that that's what is supposed to happen. We can't figure this out all by ourselves, all on our onesies. We can, however, discern it in community by listening to somebody, maybe somebody that you've kind of tried not to listen to at other times. The reason that the protests are meaningful to me is because it reminds me of all of that changing that I did and all of that initial understanding of who I can be and am meant to be in the world. Perhaps some of you are feeling some of that as well. I want for us Unitarian Universalists to not avoid these basic theological ideas. I would like for us to embrace them and say, that maybe we do have faith in a big plan, that we human beings are imperfectly putting into practice. And to celebrate and rejoice at those moments when we can feel it happening, when a vision of what is good and true, and perhaps hasn't quite happened yet in the world, but maybe can, is showing up. One of the ministers who spoke yesterday talked about one of the powers of religious community is that it can feel like a place where it's safe to hope. There's a shortage of places where it feels safe or reasonable to feel hope. But we can, and often are, that safe space with one another. My prayer is that that is true, and from what I read of the Middlebury campus, I will admit it, a newspaper, a periodical I had never read until this past week, but what I'm hearing about from the students' perspective, what's happening on that campus is that they too are having that sense of possibility. That is my prayer. That is what my faith is in. So it's May, and May 1st is also Workers' Day, and I wouldn't want to go by that entirely, so our closing hymn today is actually taken directly from the United Mine Workers hymn book. I'm sure that's not what they call it, song book. And I want, if you can, if you know any coal miners, imagine that you're singing with that voice, step by step, the longest march. It's number 157 in your hymnals, and the words are also up there. I'd like to invite Ronnie up.
Hello. I'm never up. I'm always down. Good morning. I have an announcement that I would like to share with you. I want to take a moment to express some very deep gratitude to you and everything that you have given me since I have been working here over the past few years. And I want to give you an update on some future plans of mine. I certainly never expected to be at CVUUS this long, as many of you know, especially after last year, as many of you know, I tried and failed to leave. I was supposed to move to New York, and then, surprise, I stayed. And I am very happy to say that I am now completing my 3rd year here as your director of music. So it is with a great, great, great jumble of emotions that I tell you that I will be resigning from my job at the end of June. For right now, there are 2 things that I want to absolutely make sure you hear directly from me. I've made this decision first and foremost to benefit my own physical, mental, and emotional health. Many of you know I am very overworked, and this year in particular, I had some real wake-up calls, and it was a great struggle to keep everything in my life in balance. And the effects really started to show and eat into my overall quality of life. CVUUS Music Director is one of several things in my life that I will be letting go of to try to make more space to be the most effective musician that I can and better serve the community. And the second thing I have to tell you, which I also want you to hear directly from me, is that I have accepted a position as music director with another church. Starting in August, I will become music director at the Congregational Church here in Middlebury. This position will allow me several unique opportunities, returning to organ playing, working with my mentor, Jeff Bittner, and a clearer path to a more balanced work and personal life. I want to state very clearly that this is all possible because of you. You all took a huge, huge chance on me in a very, very early point in my musical career when I had very little experience. And I'm deeply grateful for the trust, love, and support you've shown me. You've allowed me to grow, learn, and thrive in a welcoming and forgiving environment. Thank you. I hope that we can view this not just as a goodbye, but actually as a new beginning, because after all, I'm not leaving town. I will still be engaged in many musical endeavors that involve many of you sitting in this room right now, outside of CVUUS, and I have many, many ideas for the future, ways to broaden interfaith community music making across town, which involve all of you. I will miss you all, especially the choir, but all of you. You'll see me around. And thank you again for all the love that you gave me. I love you too. One final note. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for me. Thoughts, feelings, life stories, shouting things you want to say at me. Heretic. I just want to let you know that after the service, I am quite literally running over to direct a show in Rochester, and I need to be in the car like right now, actually. So I really don't have time to speak with you this morning, but I would absolutely invite you to reach out to me, if you want to talk, and I'm happy to let you know what I'm up to. So, thank you, and I love you all very much.
God, we don't even, now he has to play again. The board is just hearing this news too, Ronnie. This decision is recent, and Christina and I tried to convince him to stay. And we're very, very, very happy for you, Ronnie. This is a wonderful move and a wonderful thing for the town of Middlebury and for all of us. And we'll be fine. We'll be fine. The closing words, written by Yale Lockman. Go out right now and plant yourself in the middle of what you love most, the thing within you that is most alive. Now listen carefully, because as that love cracks your heart open, it will tell you exactly what this broken world needs from you. This is your holy work, and it cannot wait. Make it big this time. Make it so.